Okay, fine, I'll talk about the Multiverse of Madness. Even though I liked the first Doctor Strange movie, I wouldn't say it was like my absolute favorite of Marvel movies. I think the only reason I was anticipating this so much was, one, because of Sam Raimi directing the movie, and two, with this being the Multiverse of Madness, you're expecting a lot of characters from maybe your childhood to pop up out of nowhere, or maybe introducing a new MCU version of a certain character. And, you know, there was rumors that Tom Cruise was going to appear as Superior Iron Man. That did not happen. There was rumors that Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man was going to appear again. That did not happen. There's rumors saying that they did, but then cut it out. And then there's just people saying that this never happened at all. There was even rumors that Deadpool was finally going to be brought into the MCU, or even like Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, even though it seems like they plan on bringing the X-Men into the MCU. We didn't really see any of that. Now, before I get into anything else, I just want to say there are spoilers in this video. Not as many as maybe the Batman or Spider-Man No Way Home, but there's spoilers in here for people who haven't seen the movie yet and won't be able to later, so if that's you, then you might want to turn this video off now. But for the rest watching, let's go into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, or Doctor Strange in the Mob, as they're calling it for short, which I don't want to call it that because that just sounds raunchy. So, this is a sequel to 2016's Doctor Strange, and this is basically a follow-up to Spider-Man No Way Home. This is after all that takes place, as it is mentioned, you know, part of the way through the beginning of the movie. And in this universe here, there's this character named America Chavez who can go through multiverses but doesn't know how to control her powers, so she's kind of stuck jumping around universes for no reason. There was one thing about this movie that I was really wanting to kind of see how they were going to do, and that was with the horror elements, because if you know Sam Raimi, his two biggest franchises are the Evil Dead trilogy and the Spider-Man trilogy. So he's done the horror thing before, he's done the superhero thing before, now he's going to kind of mash them together, and I gotta say, there definitely is a good mixture of that. There's a scene where Wanda comes like crawling out of the thing, doing like the Grudge and stuff like that. There was a couple times where you do get jump scared, maybe not a whole lot, but you do. It's actually really violent too, that giant eyeball thing. Strange defeats by just like stabbing it in the eye and just pulling it out of the retina. Like it's violent in places. A lot of people are saying, oh, this movie should have been rated R. I don't know about that, because it's not like bloody violence. They're just more brutal, I guess, than what we've seen for MCU standards, but, you know, that is what it is. I think Sam Raimi doing that, it actually worked very well. Now, here's the problem with some Sam Raimi movies, especially when it came to the Spider-Man movies. He is one of those directors that gets straight to the point with things. He's not going to make you wait for anything. If you want to know the plot of the movie within the first 10 to 15 minutes, you're going to know what it is. He did the exact same thing with Spider-Man. Instead of making us wait 30 to 40 minutes before Peter Parker, becomes Spider-Man or gets his powers, we see right at the beginning they're going to that field trip that ends up where Peter gets bit by that radioactive spider and turns into Spider-Man. It's right at the beginning of the movie, and although a lot of the surprises don't necessarily come right at the beginning, you are seen with how Zombie Strange comes to be as one of the other Doctor Stranges in his universe ends up dying, and Doctor Strange with the, powerful evil spellbook is able to control him later to try to fight Scarlet Witch. And that's another thing in this movie that I think I'm not really used to seeing, is Scarlet Witch being a villain in this movie, because, ever since I've seen her since, I think her first appearance was Avengers Age of Ultron up until Endgame, and I still haven't watched WandaVision, but I got quite the idea of what was going on when you see it from what's going on in this movie, because you do have to watch, or at least know about WandaVision to kind of get an understanding what's going on. She seemed like she, was doing the hero thing, and then after she became a mother and this and that, she was just, all willing to just let it go. She didn't want to do this shit anymore. She just wanted to be a mom. That's all she wanted to be. But here in this movie, we find out that's just a completely different alternate universe of her. The real her that we have been seeing is still, very much distraught. And for some reason, there's this thing where they don't explain until this movie, where her and Doctor Strange, when they sleep, because they can both travel through the multiverse, when they sleep and have nightmares, or dream about, other dimensions. It's actually them seeing what's going on currently in another multiverse. It's not a dream, it's actually happening, which I thought was weird and interesting, but I mean, I really don't know. There's a lot of plot holes it leaves from the Avengers movies. It's kind of one of those things where it definitely is weird in places. Throughout this time of traveling through the multiverse, America Chavez and Doctor Strange end up on this one universe where Doctor Strange is dead, and it seems like he was like a hero when he died. They got a statue in his honor, and he goes back to find his one buddy. For some reason, I can't remember his name. He ends up, being like, oh, okay, we're friends. I thought, in my universe, we started as friends, but then you ended up hating me. Well, it turns out he was actually sent to arrest them, to get them tested on, and taken in to the Multiverse Illuminati, which is when I think the big surprises come, even though 3 out of the 5 Illuminati members were basically given away in the trailer. The first one that we actually see being Captain Carter from the Marvel What If series. This is a different version of Captain America, where Captain America himself, Chris Evans, dies in battle, so it is Agent Carter who ends up taking the serum, Peggy, his love interest, and she becomes Captain Carter, which it looked really cool. I was actually very, very happy to see Hayley Atwell return and do a different take on her character that she had in the first Captain America movie. Then we get Blackagar Boltagon, which is just Black Bolt, where apparently I didn't know much about this guy, but he's got this like supersonic whisper, and that comes into play with the story that's told later. And then of course we get the Captain Marvel variant, where it's just a different woman but basically the same powers. And then we get the big surprise, I think, because this was one of the 2 with Black Bolt that we didn't see in the trailer, and that is Reid Richards of the Fantastic Four just kind of pops out of nowhere. And not only that, but it was John freaking Krasinski. I thought that was a meme. I thought that's just something that people wanted, and sometimes it just never happens that way. But apparently Marvel was listening, and they said, let's hire John Krasinski as Reid Richards like everybody wanted us to. And even though everyone in the Marvel Illuminati dies, including Reid Richards, you just kind of have a feeling that with the MCU already announcing their Fantastic Four reboot, finally getting their hands on it, I feel like the MCU is going to do wonders with the Fantastic Four. We see that they already have their Reid Richards put in place. Plus, there's a little mention of Invisible Woman when he's trying to, talk to Wanda, be like, calm down, you don't want this, we can help you. She asks him if he has any children, and he says, yes, me and my wife have some children, and if you know in the comics, he always ends up marrying Invisible Woman, so there's kind of that little tease there too. We're not sure who plays the other characters. I know a lot of people want Emily Blunt, who I think in real life is his wife, to play Invisible Woman, and you know what, that would make a lot of sense. But right now, we know that John Krasinski may most likely return as Reid Richards in a Fantastic Four MCU film. But that was really the only one that I saw where I was like, what the fuck? Is that really Mr. Fantastic? Like, am I staring right at the new Fantastic Four? Like, it did throw me off a bit, because in that universe, he's supposed to be like their Iron Man, where he's like the smart tech guy, kind of, not necessarily the leader, but, one of the main people in this group of members here. And then, of course, the last member is Professor X. That one wasn't really a surprise. Patrick Stewart coming back and reprising this role. He dies by getting his neck snapped by Wanda. I really loved when he came in. They played a rendition of the X-Men 97 theme song, the cartoon from back in the day. I used to watch that show all the time when I was a kid, at least reruns. It was just so much fun to watch, so it was cool to hear that, and just to still see that Patrick Stewart is willing to come back and play a character that is just beloved by everybody, especially when he does it, was something that is, really, really cool. But other than that, there's not that much excitement to come from it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here and calling this a bad movie, because people, I think, have heard it so far, like, so you say it's a bad movie because there's, a lack of cameos? I said, no. Here's what I'm saying. It's a good superhero movie. It really is. I think Sam Raimi has outdone himself again. It's not, what people would say Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2 quality. We're kind of talking about right where Spider-Man 3 was, maybe even higher than that percentage-wise. If I were to give it like out of a 100% score, what would I give it? I'd probably give it somewhere like a 70%. Like, it's a good movie. I'm gonna go back and watch it again in my spare time. But I think what happened was, this movie got so overhyped that when you went and saw it and you were underwhelmed, you're just kind of left going, is that it? Is that really, like, is that all we're gonna get? We thought we were gonna get this, and although sometimes you shouldn't think what you're gonna get a whole lot, but, you know, when we talk about Spider-Man No Way Home, they didn't give away a ton in that movie other than the villains. They kept Tobey and Andrew a secret for as long as they could up until the movie came out, and, you know, that was like, even when the villains came in, it was just like this big surprise, because we're like, yes, this is what we've been wanting. You know, we dreamt this up a couple years ago. We never thought it was going to happen, and yet here we are. And with this movie, when you're going through the multiverse more than you were in Spider-Man No Way Home, you had so many possibilities. And I get it, maybe you just didn't want to throw in like a cameo that just didn't mean anything in there. I understand. But instead of traveling to different dimensions with other Stranges, you know, why not look at other worlds where there was other characters from, you know, earlier Marvel movies or, you know, whatnot, or different variants of them that go this, that, and the other. Like I said, other than the cameos from the Marvel Illuminati members, there's really not a whole lot to cheer about. Charlize Theron does show up at the end with her version of Cleo, which when you look it up, she is an X-Men, so again, I think the MCU is definitely trying to start to get the X-Men involved in some way, so that was cool to see. And I guess there's the Bruce Campbell cameo too. You know, he's obviously the star of the 3 Evil Dead movies, and of course, you know, he cameoed in all 3 Spider-Man movies. The first movie, he was the wrestling announcer who gave Spider-Man his name, basically. Second movie, he was the bouncer at the theater who wouldn't let Peter Parker in after the show had already started. And in the third movie, he was the waiter who was going to help Peter propose to MJ, and each time it was funny, it was cool. And in this one, I'll even say his cameo was kind of, like, underwhelming, because you're thinking, okay, cool, it's going to be something cool, but no, he gets mad at America Chavez because she didn't pay for these pizza balls. Apparently in this universe, you don't get pizza in, like, pizza form, you get them in, like, meatballs, which that actually sounds pretty fucking good, I'm not gonna lie. And he gets mad and Doctor Strange puts a spell on him where he like punches himself for 3 weeks, and then at the end credit, the second end credit scene, it's Bruce Campbell. You see he gets done punching himself, he laughs, and he just says, "That's it, the movie's over." And I was like, you didn't have anything clever to say? Like, that's what made your cameos in Spider-Man so great, was your character still always had something to do with something, whether it be minor. In the movie, it seemed like there was a purpose, but in this movie, it didn't seem like there was a purpose for Bruce Campbell to even be in there and make the cameo. Don't get me wrong, it was funny, it was cool to see him again, but this time around, I was just like, that is what a forced cameo looked like. You could have done other cameos with other characters that could have made a whole lot of sense, but for some reason, you had to force that Bruce Campbell cameo into the movie some way or another, and it just, I don't know. Again, it's not that Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness is a bad movie. As a matter of fact, I would maybe say it is better than the first movie. Like I said, I like the first movie, but it's not one of my favorite Marvel movies. It's just kind of another one of those slow, kind of getting to the point origin stories. It's why I tell people, when it comes to Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, Dark Knight's great, because it gets straight to the point where it wants to get to. Whereas Batman Begins, the movie before that, it's a good movie, but he doesn't really become Batman till an hour in of a 2.5 hour movie. Like, it takes so long for him to become Batman, and that's one of those movies where I don't want to say you don't want to get to the point within like 10 or 15 minutes, but at least no longer than 25-30 minutes, but it took a while for it to get there. At least with the Multiverse of Madness, we know what we're going to get right from the beginning to the end. Like, there is no, like, questioning what's going to come, what's going on, what's this plot about. I think it has some cool horror elements, some cool action scenes, and overall, I think, with Benedict Cumberbatch, this is one of his better portrayals of the character, because again, in the first Doctor Strange, we were still trying to get used to it, and even when he was in the last 2 Avengers movies, he didn't have a significant part in a whole lot of them. He was just kind of there. So and even in the new Spider-Man movie, he kind of came off as like a, not even arrogant prick, but just more of a prick than usual. And in this movie, we kind of see, all he's been going through and whatnot. And we find out that his love, Christine, his love interest from the first movie, is getting married in his universe to somebody else. And when he travels through multiverses, he realizes that Steven and Christine in all the other universes apparently have trouble staying together themselves as well. They always have some sort of, relationship issue, and he realizes that, and when he meets one of the Multiverse Christines, he basically tells her before he leaves and goes back to his universe, I love you in every universe, which I think doesn't hit as hard as I love you 3000, but it definitely is something where you're like, you know, that was a good line written in there. I do like that. I do like what Sam Raimi had. But apparently, too, 30 to 40 minutes of this movie was cut out, so there probably was more. Like I said, maybe there's deleted scenes that'll be on, like, the Blu-ray when it comes out, or maybe they'll do, like, the Batman route, where they're like, so-and-so was in this movie, so here's this deleted scene just to prove it to you. Like, it's just like, maybe there's that. But at the same point in time, this movie was hyped up to be so many things, and people were like, look at this, there's Deadpool here, and this, that, and the other, and oh, apparently Tom Cruise's Iron Man gets 15 minutes of screen time when he got none. He got 0, so I just, you know, I think it was just too overhyped for what it was. Like, if there was, I would definitely say that No Way Home was the perfect amount of hype, because we kind of knew what we were getting, but at the same point in time, we also didn't, and there was more to expect from it. Whereas with Doctor Strange, it was like, we saw most of the surprises in the trailer, and we kind of had an idea what was going to happen, but not a full idea. But even when it did happen, it wasn't like a suspenseful moment like that. Like, I would say that, you know, when it comes to the superhero movies that have come out over the past couple of months, like Spider-Man and Batman and Doctor Strange, and Morbius. I'll count Morbius, because I was about to say Doctor Strange is probably the worst, and then I was thinking about the comments being like, what about Morbius? Sure. Morbius is an anti-hero movie, the villain origin story, so I don't know if I'd count that as a superhero movie, but it is part of the superhero genre, so I guess I can count that one too. So Doctor Strange is probably my second least favorite one that I have seen since December, beating out Morbius, but of course, you know, losing out to Spider-Man and Batman, but it's still enjoyable enough to where I think you get your kicks from it, and for people who are big fans, especially seeing maybe some of the Marvel Illuminati members, I remember my theater going nuts when Reid Richards popped up on screen, and when we saw that it was John Krasinski, we were like, holy shit, Marvel actually did it. For some reason, the MCU, Marvel, Kevin Feige just listens to his fans a lot of the time. I mean, he listened with the whole Spider-Man thing. He listened with, oh, let's cast John Krasinski as Reid Richards. You know, he doesn't have to do that, but he does, because he knows what the fans want. Maybe not this time around, but again, it's your typical Sam Raimi film. That's all I have to say. It's not too long. It gets to the point. It has moments that you absolutely love, but then it just has moments where you're like, why were they in here? This just seems unnecessary to me. And sometimes, you can see this with a lot of Sam Raimi movies, it does get confusing in some portions. Even Spider-Man 1 and 2, you get confused in some areas, but I've seen those movies so many times that I really don't get confused anymore, except for Spider-Man 3 and whatever the hell he was trying to do with Venom. But that's my thoughts on this. You can tell me in the comments below, what did you think of this movie? Who were you expecting in the movie that maybe you were disappointed not to see? And what do you think about Mr. Fantastic, John Krasinski, being yanked into the MCU? And what do you think they're going to do with Charlize Theron's character, Clea? Do you think they're going to add more X-Men as we go on? Do you think they're going to reboot the X-Men like they are the Fantastic Four? What is the MCU's plan from here on out? Because with Phase 4 coming to an end, I'm still very confused as to what they're trying to accomplish here, whereas Phase 1, 2, and 3, you knew what they were leading up to, but here you're like, okay, well, there's the multiverse, there's this, there's that, the Sonyverse is setting up for something, so what the hell is the end product that you're trying to go for here? So I'd really like to hear what you guys think on that, but until then, don't worry, I'll be back to my old setup soon. Just basically, my friend has been staying because he's been working with me and my dad, so the air mattress is right next to me, blocking where I usually sit over the videos, so I sat here at my computer just to do this video. But yeah, that's it for me. Stay safe out there, wear your mask, get vaccinated, and until then, I will catch you all in the next one.